Welcome to the International House. My name is Steve Edwards. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute of Politics, and we are so excited to have all of you with us bright and early on this crisp Friday morning. We hope you are properly fed and energized and ready for a great conversation featuring U.S. House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi and our very own David Axelrod. Today's event is part of our speaker series, which, as those of you know, is an ongoing series of conversations and lectures and panel discussions with some of the leading players in politics and policy around the world. You can find out more about our series by going to politics.uchicago.edu. We have a number of events coming up, including one this afternoon at noon, where we will begin our Sergeant Shriver series in public service leadership with the first in a series of seminars exploring the creation of the Peace Corps and the social justice work that happened under Sergeant Shriver's leadership there. That's at noon at the IOP. And on Wednesday of next week, we'll turn our attention to global affairs as we welcome the Moroccan ambassador to the United States here on campus. Once again, politics.uchicago.edu. We want to thank our partners at International House for graciously hosting us once again today. We had an event here last night with Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill. I'm told that everybody, all the staff of iHouse, just slept here and totally rearranged the room and set up breakfast, so we greatly appreciate all their extra work to make today's early morning event possible. I also want to take a moment to recognize a few elected officials who are with us here today, including Illinois House Majority Leader Barbara Flynn Curry, and former U.S. Congressman and current Democratic congressional candidate Brad Schneider from the 10th Congressional District. It's great to have both of you with us. Today we will be recording our conversation. You can catch other webcasts of what we do at the Institute by going to our website, as I mentioned. We're also active on social media today. The hashtag for today's event is IOP Pelosi, if you're active on Twitter. And if you like conversations like this, we've been mentioning it this fall. We just launched a new podcast, David Axelrod and One-on-One Conversations with some of the leading players in politics today, taking you behind the scenes into their backgrounds and influences. It's called The Axe Files, and we encourage you to subscribe on iTunes. It's fantastic. He just returned from San Diego, where yesterday he finished an hour-long conversation with Mitt Romney, so you can watch for that coming up next week on The Axe Files. We will pause for your questions midway through today's event. We ask that when we do, that you keep your questions short and to the point. We would love to get to as many of you as possible. The mission of the Institute of Politics is to inspire the next generation of public service leaders, and that's why I'm very pleased to welcome to the podium Haley Miller, one of our great student leaders. She's a fourth year here in the college. She's from Cincinnati, Ohio. She's a major in public policy. She's currently interning on our event staff at the IOP. Before that, she led our Summer in Washington program, and she's also very active in our Women in Public Service Leadership program. Please join me in welcoming Haley Miller to get our conversation started.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Today, I have the incredible honor to introduce a woman who has served as a role model and a trailblazer in American politics. Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi comes from a strong family tradition of public service. Her father was a 5-term congressman and mayor of Baltimore for 12 years. She's joked that she and her brothers were all baptized in the Roman Catholic Church and the Democratic Party. After learning at the age of 9 or 10 that girls could not become priests in the Catholic Church, Pelosi responded, "Well then, I'll go into politics instead." She went on to become the first female Speaker of the House. Leader Pelosi brings to her position a distinguished record of legislative accomplishment and leadership. She's been instrumental in passing key investments in college aid, initiatives to help small businesses and veterans, advocating for an economic agenda to support American women, and historic health care reforms, bringing together the votes needed to pass the Affordable Care Act after months of contentious debate. Leader Pelosi has made energy her flagship issue and has worked on energy legislation ranging from the 1989 Pelosi Amendment to the 2009 American Clean Energy and Security Act. Leader Pelosi has represented San Francisco, California's 12th district, for 28 years. During her tenure as Speaker of the House, she was referred to as the most powerful woman in American politics and the most powerful speaker in half a century. In 2013, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame and continues to be a role model and political force. Leading today's discussion is IOP Director David Axelrod, so please join me in welcoming House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi and David Axelrod.
Good evening. Leader, I know you're on a tight schedule here, so I want to dive right in there with a question that I'm sure everybody wants to know. What the hell is going on in Washington? What's going on in Congress? Are we ever going to have a speaker? I asked you, we did a little podcast before this. Speaker, you had the job. Seems like a good job. Why can't somebody take it?
Well, they would all take it. They just have to have the votes to get it, and that's really what the challenge is. The Speaker of the House, most people really don't know what that is. I mean, Speaker of the House is the third highest office in the land, second in line to the presidency. Speaker of the House has awesome power in the House, the power of recognition of who will speak and who will bring what legislation comes to the floor. And it's the Speaker of the House, not of one particular party. Each party has its leaders. The Speaker of the House is the leader of his party or her party, but you have responsibilities to the whole House, to the whole country. The question now, we have a very unusual situation right now because the majority party in the Congress is an anti-governance party, and that's unfortunate. And I don't paint all of them with that same brush, but the majority of them are. 151 Republicans voted to shut down government just at the end of September. They voted against the bill to keep government open. President Washington cautioned as he left office against political parties at war with their own government. And that's kind of the situation that we have. The antidote to it, I think, is public awareness. President Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish everything. Without it, nothing. And that the upside, if you could even say an upside, because this is very sad, the upside is that there's more awareness of what the choices are in terms of the issues as we go forward, what kind of an economy we have, how we address issues that relate to fairness and opportunity, education, infrastructure, the climate challenge that we face. So welcome the spotlight to what is happening there. Will they? I don't know. I would be the last person to tell you what's going on in the Republican caucus. And anybody I might suggest as a good leader would immediately be not considered. So
Well, you want to eliminate anybody right now? Or? Do you...
But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that there are enough responsible members on that side to make progress. His Holiness was just here, as you know, Pope Francis, and he spoke to Congress in a very interesting way. He talked about leadership. He said there should be openness. Imagine, that was fabulous. I mean, transparency is the most valuable trait that we could have. He talked about pragmatism, working together to get the job done, and recognizing that not anybody has all the good ideas, to listen, to cooperate, to work together. Hopefully that will inspire someone.
Well, it inspired John Boehner to resign.
It inspired him to keep government open, and that was really what was important.
There is a theory that with Boehner now a short-timer and unburdened by some of the considerations that he had when he was not a short-timer, that you guys can get a lot of stuff done in the next few weeks on a bipartisan basis. Do you anticipate that?
We have to. But, you know, we launched right into this conversation without even talking about the Cubs or what an honor it is to be here at University of Chicago and to be here with you, distinguished leader, and thank you for your leadership with this institute to encourage new, young leadership for our country.
Well, thank you for helping us do that.
Welcome.
You're right.
See,
she is gently lecturing me on my manners.
No, I'm just changing the subject.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Democrats. On our side, on the other hand, we have consensus building. We're respectful of different views. We build consensus. We understand that, again, as His Holiness said, not everybody's ideas are the best. You know, you have to listen and learn. We have generational differences, geographic, gender, ethnic, and all the rest, and the beautiful diversity of our caucus, which is, by the way, over 50% of our caucus, think of this, is women, minorities, and LGBT. That's never happened in the history of the world, that a political party in a democratic system would be minority, majority, minority. And that gives us the beauty is in the mix, the constant debate. That's very invigorating, but also that when we have consensus built, it is built not in a monolithic way, but in a very diverse way. And I'm sure that our former and future colleague, Brad Schneider, could attest to that, and we look forward to welcoming him back to the Congress.
So, noting that you just showed everybody why you're a big league politician, in seizing the
I
initiative
love the
away
name
from me.
politician. I really like that name. I do.
But let me switch it back to what I was asking about before, which is,
Why?
do you think that there is going to be an opportunity, while Boehner is still there, to get some of these critical things done? We have a debt ceiling vote coming up.
Yeah.
We know what happened in the summer of 2011, walked right to the brink. Transportation bill is
Right.
the
Well,
highway
we have
fund is-
deadlines, yeah. The transportation bill expires, that all expires, the highway trust fund, all of it, October 31st. The debt ceiling, November 3rd. November 3rd, we have to have legislation supporting, honoring the full faith and credit of the United States of America, November 3rd. December 11th is the day by which we have to have legislation passed to keep government open for the next year. So it's a matter of days, weeks, and 2 months that we have to get all of this done. Also, there are issues like the Ex-Im Bank, which is expired. There are 9/11 health workers, which has expired. You know, the things that have expired that we have to address, but these others are on a very short fuse. Just the very suggestion, when President Obama, and aren't we proud of President Obama? And he just when President Obama, when we were having the negotiations on the budget in the summer of, 11, President Obama was very, shall we say, sympathetic to their views and said, yes, we'll go down the path you suggest. And then they said, well, we've changed our mind, we're not going down that path. Some people have said President Obama walked away from that budget, but he didn't.
Well, that's what Boehner says.
Yeah, he says, but I was in the room, I know, he said, yes, and then they said, oh, never mind. But anyway, putting that aside for the moment, just for the moment, at that time, the full faith and credit, the debt ceiling, as we call it, was running out. And they said they weren't going to vote to lift the debt ceiling. And there was this big discussion about why and how and this or that. Well, the president prevailed, and the debt ceiling was lifted. But the very thought that they would question whether we would honor the full faith and credit lowered our credit rating. You just don't mess with this. This is about how our economy functions and the rest, and it sends a message to the world, because many of those people are our creditors.
So do you think the Speaker is committed to making sure that the debt limit is
Yes.
raised?
Yes.
Let me ask you, I want to get to student
This
questions.
is a moral obligation. Yes, I think he is.
Well,
so I think we'll get that
it was
done.
then too, and there were those who were willing to.
Now.
Yeah. How much does the presidential race play into? Because you've got guys like Senator Cruz who are running, who would use these issues as organizing tools.
We will lift the debt ceiling.
Okay, good. Let's move on then. I want to ask you about three issues. One is rather fraught within your caucus, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership,
Yes.
Trade Treaty with Asia. You're sort of an expert on that region, and there's an argument that this is essential to our future relationships and economic relationships with that region. Europe has negotiated a treaty, Canada, Europe is
Yeah.
So, but there's great resistance in your caucus to it.
Yes.
Will it pass?
I guess it depends on how many Republican votes they have, but we haven't seen it yet. So just so you know, one of the fights that we had recently, debates in Congress that we had, was about fast track. Do you give the administration fast track? That means when they come back with an agreement, you can't amend it or anything, you just up or down fast track it. There was not a great deal of interest in our caucus in relinquishing the prerogative of Congress to review a trade agreement. So many of us voted against the fast track. But at the time I said, this is a vote about process. When we see the agreement, we can make a decision about whether we like the agreement or not. So we're waiting to see the agreement. We haven't seen it yet. So that's what we're asking for. Now, on that subject, our criteria are that we want to see an agreement that is fair to American workers, that lifts American pay. I mean, the pay in our country has stagnated over the years, and we want our economy to grow, and the best way for it to grow is for our middle class to grow, consumer confidence, inject demand into the economy, create jobs, have everyone have fairness in the system. So we'll make a judgment about that agreement as to how it affects our workers and the ability to strengthen the paycheck. You remember, it's the economy.
Yes.
Stupid.
Right, yes.
Well, we say it's the paycheck genius. We need to have strong paychecks for American workers. One of the concerns I have about it is I think that you cannot separate commerce and climate, that there has to be a relationship there. And I want to see how the environmental pieces of it are spelled out. They won't be spelled out to my satisfaction, but nonetheless, let's see what direction they are taking.
Is it going to impact your caucus that Secretary Clinton has taken a position against it?
This is a very, members, our titles are representative, and that's our job description too. We're representatives of our districts. And this is really more of a district vote, I think, than, let me say it this way, I think the statement that Senator, Secretary, so many titles, so well prepared to be president. I think that the statement that Secretary Clinton made increases the comfort level of people, but I don't think it's dispositive of their vote. I think their vote is going to be about how this impacts their district, and you just don't vote your district. At some point, you have to lead and be courageous about something that might be in the national interest, but parochially doesn't really, isn't popular in your district. So.
Two other questions. What was your reaction to the president's announcement yesterday that he was going to leave the troops that are in Afghanistan there for the foreseeable future?
Well, I think that what the president said is in keeping with the path he set us on. Some people are saying he switched. I don't think he switched. I think this is consistent with the proposal that he made. What I have said about it is this president has solemnly and deeply, thoughtfully considered how we put our troops in harm's way, and I look forward to a very high-level briefing on what would be accomplished by doing this, but respectful of his conservative, another interpretation of that word, conservative, wanting to use the troops. I mean, he knows that there's not a big appetite in our country for boots on the ground. He feels very responsible by putting our young people at risk. But I still think I'd like to see the
original plan was to get down to 1,000 troops by the end of next year.
But he left the door open to there might be need for more.
Do you think there'll be resistance in your caucus?
Well, I think we look forward to. It's a funny thing. You really want to know the facts. Sometimes people say, "What do you think of this or that?" Well, I say, "Well, let's define what that is." So we really want to see what the purpose, what the timeline, what the possibilities of success are. And again, we trust the president, but there is a strong attitude in our country that we don't want boots on the ground.
Last question for me, and then we want to take them from the audience. The Senator Sanders, who you groomed as a potential president when he was in your caucus.
Yeah, he would say that, right?
He has suggested, and others have as well, Elizabeth Warren and others, that rather than in any way cutting Social Security or Medicare because of increasing pressures on the federal budget and long-term concerns about changing demographics, that we ought to shore those programs up and actually increase benefits because of the economic pressures on a lot of retirees. What is your sense of that?
Well, that question goes to the heart of the matter of what the debate is in Washington, D.C. generally. It is about the economy, and the economy is affected by the budget. The budget debate is the debate about our value system. A budget should be a statement of our national values. What is important to us as a country should be what we invest in, the education of our children, the quality and safety of our infrastructure to promote commerce, improve quality of life, create jobs. Issues of investment that really return money to the Treasury. Nothing brings more money to the Treasury than the education of the American people. Early childhood, K through 12, higher education, post-grad, lifetime learning. And so when they say, as they do, we want to cut Pell Grants or we want to do this, that's a false economy. You are increasing the deficit by making those cuts. So that's the fight that we have. So now we come to a place where they're saying, well, it's the entitlements, they're the problem. No, the biggest issue are the tax breaks for the wealthiest people in our country. They are called tax expenditures. That's spending. When you give a big tax cut to the high end, that's not producing jobs and saying, that's our job program. Tax cuts for the wealthiest people in our country. If it trickles down, that would be good. If it doesn't, so be it. That's the free market. Now, we see the free market as a consumer economy where we have investments that grow the economy, promote opportunity and fairness. And again, with increasing the purchasing power, that big paycheck of the middle class, really turning our economy around. So when they say, well, we should go to the entitlement, if there are savings to be had in Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, if there's savings to be had, they should be invested back in the solvency of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They should not be used to subsidize tax cuts for the wealthiest people.
But what about the idea,
That is the debate of the election.
Leader, what about the idea of expanding them? That's what, some of the progressive members of the House and Senate want to expand Social Security and Medicare and take some of those tax expenditures that you're talking about and actually use them to enhance those programs, not just shore them up?
Yeah, well, let's put it all on the table and see exactly what everybody's talking about. We have a great enthusiasm in our caucus for expanding or protecting Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid, people think of it as health care for poor people. Overwhelmingly, it is for seniors and long-term health care. And public doesn't, Madam President of the Senate, we're so honored that you're here. But people have to know what this means to your family. Forget the politics. What does this mean to what does this mean to your family? If they are making college more expensive, if they're saying we're reducing Pell Grants, if they're saying that Medicare, Medicaid, all of that should be, what does it mean to your family? I have young people come talk to me. I listen to them in my district, in the Capitol and all, and they say, I know that the economic security of my grandparents enables my parents to invest in me more. They see that connection. It's about family. So what does this mean to America's working families? Let's just see what the suggestions are. We want to recognize the change in demographics. That is true. That's something that has to be addressed. But the very idea, let me just tell you this one story. So we're doing this budget in 2011, and we're having a debate about where we find the pay-fors, the offsets. If we want to invest here, how do we pay for it there? So we have to find $200 billion worth of pay-fors, or just cuts. They want to make cuts. So I said, you know, one good place to go is $38 billion in tax and incentives that we give the 5 big oil companies. I'm not even talking about independents. I'm talking about the 5 big oil companies. They get $38 billion as incentives to drill. That drilling is going to bring them a net profit, not revenue, not income, but profit of $1 trillion. They don't need that $38 billion in incentives. My Republican colleague said, why would we do that when we can just cut $38 billion from Pell Grants? So I said, you know, can I tell people that you said that? I mean, that is so embarrassing for you. You would rather give $38 billion to big oil, it's going to make $1 trillion on what they're doing with or without that $38 billion, and you would cut it from Pell Grant? Can I tell people? They said, you don't have to tell people. We have it written down in our proposal. So that is the values debate that we have. What are we investing in for our future, our young people? Education, innovation begins in the classroom. Family, and all the rest of it spring from financial security.
Speaking of young people, let's hear from them.
All right.
Whoa.
Oh, we're going to be here a while.
There's a microphone. Yeah, well, yeah. I see a guy with a blue shirt on right there, or it looks blue. Whatever color that guy's shirt. You hand him the microphone, will you?
It's green for reference.
Okay.
But
Sorry.
as a guy from a strong Catholic family, I think my mom would kill me if I didn't ask, do you think His Holiness's remarks to Congress have had any actual impact, or is he just kind of banging his holy head against a wall?
Oh, no, tell your mother it was quite impressive. Because he was, of course, he's the Pope. And he's the Pope named for St. Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of my city of San Francisco, the first environmentalist, cared about God's creation. And that's His Holiness, his encyclical, Laudate Si, in praise of Sire. He addressed that to St. Francis. This is God's creation, I believe it is, and we have a moral responsibility to protect it. And aside from that, he talked about air pollution, which is an issue for children and the air, all of us, the air we breathe, but especially children. So he's a scientist, you know, he's a scientist, His Holiness, and his approach was really brilliant. He wasn't, and I said to you, he was saying, none of us has all the best ideas. Listen to each other. Be open. Be pragmatic. Work together for the good of people. So that was a really important message for people to have. The aura that he has is, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it, no matter what shield you may want to put up. He is a very special. It was an honor to be in the same space that he was in. So I think your mother, tell her that he was political. I mean, that is to say, not political in taking partisan side, but he understood. He was a leader in addition to being a religious person.
How did it impact
of
on you
faith.
personally? As
Sorry?
someone, how did it impact on you personally as someone who raised in the church?
I showed him pictures of my children. I have 5 children, 9 grandchildren. I showed him all that, of course, and he blessed them. Their picture. When I was a little girl, I went to Rome with my family. My father was the mayor of Baltimore at the time, and we had an audience with Pope Pius XII. This is a long time ago. with Pope Pius XII, and that was very exciting. I mean, if you're not Catholic, you may not understand how exciting it is. This is Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and this is the continuation of all of that. And then I welcomed as a member of Congress, Pope John Paul to San Francisco. I met Pope Benedict at the White House, when President Bush was president. And I waved to Pius VI in New York, and he waved back to me, I'm sure of it. So this was but there's something really different and special about Francis. I mean, again, every pope is different in his way. I guess you can't say his or her way, his way. And he was quite remarkable, saintly, in a hurry to get things done, and definite about his vision, his knowledge on the subjects, his strategic thinking about how to get things done, and his beautiful eloquence, the simplicity of his message to draw people to him. So I saw him speak at the White House. He was spectacular. At the Congress, at the Mass, there was a Mass, and he was sensational there. So all of his statements had a little bit of a different tact. All of it fundamentally based on the principle that we are all God's children. There's a spark of divinity that exists in each one of us, and we have to respect that of each other and recognize it in ourselves as to our responsibility to each other. And he made that such a given that it's hard to see how anybody could resist meeting the needs of all of God's children. The Bible says to meet the needs of God's creation is an act of worship. To ignore those needs is to dishonor the God who made us. That was sort of, he didn't say it that way, but that was in keeping with his message. I hope that there's something residual with our members. I know the speaker was very effective, having nothing to do with his
That he resigned the next day.
resignation. But it was pretty special. Yeah.
Let's get some more questions in here. Yes, okay. That's, Christine, you gotta I'm not gonna take the rap for
Good
that.
morning.
Yeah,
Me neither. I'm not taking a rabbit either.
good. Yes, certainly, we're not gonna let you take that.
No, you're going to choose.
Good morning, and thank you so much for being with us
Oh,
today.
here we are.
I'm Mara, and I'm co-chair of the Women in Public Service program here at the IOP. We would like to thank you so much. And I was just wondering what advice you have for women entering politics, and also what you would say to young people who might be disillusioned with politics in general.
Well, thank you for your question, because this is really important. We have an approach in our caucus: when women succeed, America succeeds. That's not just a slogan, that's a statement of fact. And you can apply it to any country in the world, any organization, when women succeed. And what I say to young people, the best advice I ever had when I was running for office, which I never intended to do, I know that some of the conversation is that I was going to run for office, I wanted to be normal. I mean, all we did was work when I was growing up.
Because your father was in
politics. We worked
politics.
all the time. You know, we were always, and we didn't have weekends, any of that. We always worked. You know, meeting the needs of people was beautiful and lovely, but I wanted to, you know, Elvis Presley, rock and roll. Let's get on with life, okay? I know that sounds like really ancient history to you, and it is, but that was what it was, rock around the clock. That was my goal, to be a normal 50s teenager. But when I then did run for office, the most important advice I had was be yourself. And I say that to the men, young men and women as well. You may think that so-and-so is great and you want to model yourself. You can have mentors, and you can have models that you may say, I like that style or whatever, but just be yourself, because authenticity is the most valuable trait. Sincerity, show us what's in your heart. Tell us what's in your head. Show us what's in your heart. And that is really important. And I would go back to what I said about Francis. If you, as a young woman, and young men too, not to be disillusioned about politics, because this is about you. The future belongs to you. These decisions that are made every day affect you more than they're going to affect an older generation. So take responsibility for it. So find what you love to work. You know, what is your purpose? What is your vision? My daughter Christine, who does these boot camps, she would say, what is your statement of purpose? Why would you be interested in politics? Is it about preserving the planet? Is it about fairness in our economy? Is it about voting rights and civil rights and the rest of that? We're having 50th anniversary of the voting rights. What motivates you? Learn about it. Know what you're talking about. So you have a purpose, a vision, you know about it, so you have some judgment about how to make a plan, how you think you can advance your purpose. And if you have a determination and a knowledge and the judgment that springs from that, and you have a path, and that means collaborating with other people too, you will attract, and then you can tell your story. What is my story? This is what I care about. This is what I know about it. This is what I can do about it. This is what I want to enlist others to help me do about it. Your sincerity, your knowledge, your recognition that there's much more to learn, and you can learn from others, and that the collaboration is important. I am telling you, you will attract so much support because you are real, because you care, because you know, and because you have the stamina. It takes stamina to fulfill your purpose. It's very exciting. And I just say to the young generation, there's so many things that affect you. Like they say to me in Washington, well, we can't heap mountains of debt onto the next generation. I say, you don't mind heaping mountain of college debt on them, so why are we talking the grand budget for them? Let them be part of the decision about what the priorities are and what they want to, how they envision the future. It's very exciting. It is not for the faint of heart. There'll be others who don't share your view, or maybe do, but think that they should be the one. But you just have to have that courage. And you can have all the conviction, you can have all the commitment, but you have to have the courage to go out there too. And when you show that, you will attract support for your cause, for yourself, for your friends who may be running, but you will make a difference, and you cannot abandon that responsibility to make the difference for the future. So we need many more women. We need more young people. We need more women. This is an aside. This is an absolute fact, I'm telling you now. I guarantee you this. You reduce the role of money in politics, and you will elect more women, more young people, more minorities to public office. That has to be undone in our system for us to have the very best go for
Yeah. Someone has the microphone?
Yeah. Hi. Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you for being here again. So the JCPOA, the Iran deal, delays Iran's nuclear breakout, but at a cost. It provides the world's largest state sponsor of terror with vast sums of money and a legal pathway to new conventional weapons. Even Senator Booker, a member of your own party, referred to it as a, quote, flawed and deal with significant shortcomings. How would you justify your strong advocacy for this deal, and particularly your referencing to it as a, quote, diplomatic masterpiece to the thousands of innocent civilians whose death this will facilitate? Apologize for the shakiness.
Thank you for your question, and I don't agree with the stipulation at the end of your question that it's going to facilitate the deaths of millions of people. I said it was a diplomatic masterpiece, and I really do appreciate your question and the fervor that you bring to it. A few of our members shared that view. I call it a diplomatic masterpiece. It's going to be longer than you want, because I know about this deal.
I got all day.
They don't. Here's the thing, talking about myself now. I have been working, one of the reasons that I went to Congress and then wanted to go on the Intelligence Committee, I'm talking over 20 years ago, for intelligence, was to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. This is the biggest threat, obviously, to the globe, to security in the world. And so I went on the Intelligence Committee. As such, I went to places like, and I studied where stuff was flowing, fissile material. I went with Howard Berman on our way to Eastern Europe, to France, to say to the French, stop selling dual-use technology to the Iranians. The Iranians, this is about Iran specifically. Went to Russia and said, stop selling weapons of mass destruction. But they said, the French said, we're not really doing it. It's not dual use. It's just simulation. It's not what you think it is. We're not really doing it. The Russians said, who are you to tell us not to sell weapons? You're the biggest weapons sales country in the world. And they were right. We are, unfortunately. And then the third, we went to China and said to the Chinese, I know you're doing ring magnets, which are needed for the enrichment of uranium for such centrifuge. Stop transferring technology to Iran. And of course, the Chinese said, we're just not doing it. The Russians said, pushed it back on us. The French said it's something else. The Chinese said, no, we're not doing it. But they were. And so studying this Iran issue for at least 25 years, and in the larger context, weapons of mass destruction, I have tracked this. And that this president was able to engage the three countries I just mentioned, plus two, Germany and the UK, into a sustained engagement over a long period of time to produce an agreement. Yeah, flawed, as Booker said, no agreement is perfect. None. I don't know one perfect bill we've ever passed. It's always a negotiation. If you negotiate with yourself, you can agree with yourself 100% of the time, but that's not making the world a safer place. What you have to do is bring in people. Now, when this agreement was written, it's the P5, the permanent 5 of the UN Security Council plus one, Germany. They're not a P5. But when the agreement, if you read the agreement, you would see it's the EU plus 3, the United States, Russia, and China. So this is a massive agreement. Almost every country in the world, except one, supports, almost all the countries support the agreement. Now, what do you judge a country by when you're looking at other countries, not just Iran, but countries? What do you want to make sure they don't have? That they don't have the fissile material. It wasn't indigenous to Iran. Countries sold it to them. That had to stop. That they have the launch capacity. The Chinese were selling all kinds of missile systems and all the rest, by way of Pakistan and the rest. You don't want them to have the fissile material. You don't want them to have the launch capacity. You don't want them to have the scientists to put that together. And countries were helping Iran do this. Iran's a very well-educated country. They didn't have a lot of this indigenously from the start, but then they got it. And you do not want them to have the intention. Material, scientists, launch capacity, intention. So the question is, how do you address all of that? I said what I thought diplomatically it was masterful that the president was able to achieve. Then we go to the making a judgment. So when this thing came, this agreement, I knew how to make judgments about it because I've been involved in it for a long time, and the longest serving still member of the Intelligence Committee in the history of the Congress, over 20 years. But don't take my word for it. The nuclear scientists, the nuclear physicists, Nobel laureates, people who study and do research on nuclear weapons and study all of that, they congratulated the president on what he did in this non-proliferation treaty, congratulated him and said it was a model, like a prototype for future non-proliferation treaties. They vouched for the verification and the inspection and the rest of that. The greatest scores of nuclear physicists, Nobel laureate category. The generals and admirals who came out in support of it from a security standpoint. You had the diplomats, overwhelmingly, no party, Democrats, Republicans, or largely diplomats, no party, supporting the agreement. So you had people of defense, admirals, generals, diplomats. You had people of faith, big acceptance of giving this diplomatic entity a chance. You had the scientist, the nuclear physicist. So this agreement is a great accomplishment. Now we have to make sure that they honor it. And the more compliments I pay to the president for the agreement, the more we send a message to the Iranians. You have to live up to this. And the heads of state and the diplomats of the countries involved have made that very clear. Because again, one nuclear bomb can ruin your whole day, as the bumper sticker says. This is not any joke. And if they were to have, now let me just say this about Israel. I think the creation of the State of Israel was the greatest political accomplishment of the 20th century. I love it. I can tell you about my father being a Shabbat Goy and all the rest of that. He worshiped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a New Deal member of Congress. But he parted company with Roosevelt on two subjects. One, not recognizing the treatment of Jews in Europe and the establishment of a state, a Jewish state, in what was called Palestine. He wanted everything to go faster. And that's part of our family history. That's in our DNA about Israel. But if Israel never existed, if it never existed, Iran could not have a bomb in the national security interest of the United States of America. So Israel has proximity, we have concerns, we want to have mitigation and other support to fight up other bad behavior that Iran may be engaged in. But in terms of stopping this progress on a weapon event, they are a threshold nuclear state. This pushes it off. When they say, oh, it's going to make them a threshold state, they are a threshold state. This puts it off. And that's why people like Jerry Nadler, one of the great supporters of Israel in the Congress, was so courageous when he came out with it. But I think you have to give this diplomacy a chance to work. Always saying to the Iranians, don't mess with this. We're deadly serious, because you cannot have a weapon of mass destruction. So I think the president is to be congratulated. And as the scientist said, we congratulate the president on what he has done in this. It is controversial. Brad, my friend, disagrees with me on this subject, but I'm very pleased that we were able to go forward in the Congress to give
point
peace
out to
a
the
chance.
questioner that Senator Booker voted for the
He
agreement.
voted for it, yeah.
We should take
Hi.
a last question here.
Thank you so much for being here. You're clearly a supporter of women's involvement in politics and specialties in general, but with that said, what do you think it'll take to get equal pay for equal work legislation passed?
Well, this is a very important issue. And when Women Succeed, America Succeeds agenda is about 4 or 5 things. One is raise the minimum wage, because most of the people making the minimum wage are women. Equal pay for equal work. Our governor in California just passed the most comprehensive equal pay for equal work bill. We're very proud of that. The third is paid sick leave, really important to women in the workplace. Affordable quality child care, very important to families in the workplace, both of those, to men and women, and recognition of the role women play in elder care and the rest of that we have to have policies that recognize that, so that we can unleash the power of women in our economy, in our academic world, in our military, in every aspect of our lives. In Japan, they have womanomics. They know that the only way they're going to turn their economy around is by unleashing the power of women in the economy. The president of Colombia has said our secret weapon, women in the workplace, we have to do that here. Now, we passed the bill in the House a number of times, the equal pay for equal work. It just couldn't get through the Senate because they required 60 votes, and we didn't have the 60 votes. We had 60 votes for a few months. You remember, we had 60 votes by June or July when finally Senator Specter changed parties and Al Franken was seated. So for the first 6 months, we didn't. And then a month later, Senator Kennedy passed away. And so there was that interim period. And then in January, Scott Brown won. So the opportunity wasn't there to do what we needed to do. But we have to persist. And we did. The first bill that President Obama signed was the Lilly Ledbetter Act to end discrimination in the workplace for women, so that women have the right to know what was going on in terms of pay, and could sue, because that was what Lilly Ledbetter could not do. It was the first bill he signed when he became president. And ending discrimination was what this president has been about. The last bill, one of the last bills he signed when we had the majority, was to end discrimination in the military by repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And our country has always been about expanding opportunity. What man would say, my daughter, my wife, my sister shouldn't make as much as the person standing next to her with comparable education experience and a knowledge of the subject? I think in the public, there's a great deal of support for it. We have to get it passed. And it, again, will enable women to honor. The biggest question I usually get when I go to a women's group is, how do you balance work and home? Well, money is a good part of that. I mean, to have enough money to be able to meet the needs. But in any case, thank you for your interest in that. We can't rest, and we'll do that. We have a few things. If I could say to the Republicans, if we were only going to do a few things, of course we have to meet the deadlines on all of these bills that I talked about. But why can't we just bring a bill to the floor to have reasonable background checks for gun safety? The country overwhelmingly supports that. Why can't we have comprehensive immigration bill? It passed in the Senate in a bipartisan way in the Senate, but they wouldn't bring it up in the House. Just who we are, a nation of immigrants. And then, of course, this is the 50th anniversary, and I'll close with this, of the Voting Rights Act. That was a big deal. The March on Selma, across that bridge, that was a bridge to the ballot. And Martin Luther King always talked about the ballot, the ballot, the ballot. Legislation, legislation, legislation that would spring from those elections. Your life, your life, your life. And that's really what it's about. It's about people voting, having their voices heard. Tell you the truth, I don't even care if Democrats or Republicans win, as long as everyone who wins cares about people and is willing to have fairness as the underlying basis of our system, which it is, which is what our founders envisioned. So on this 50th anniversary, we're using this as a year of inspiration to show a connection between people's lives and the importance of the ballot and the legislation that could spring from electing people, whatever their party, who understand that women should have equal pay for equal work. And you know, the list goes on. We have to invest in our infrastructure. We have to protect our environment. That's my message to you. A third of the electorate voted in the last election. A third of the electorate. How could it be when so many people's lives depended on what happened? Depends on what happens, and that's what the reality of it has to be, what Dr. King said, the ballot, legislation, your life. It's all connected. It's about the future. Elections are about the future. You are the future. Take responsibility for it, and make sure that whoever you vote for, Democratic, Republican, otherwise identified, that they understand what your standards are, what you expect to see. Now, I've been called the highest ranking woman in politics, in history in America, and I have. I've had the highest ranking job, Speaker of the House. Pretty soon, I will be relinquishing that title, and I'm very excited.
So, Rita, I want to thank you. I want to finish on this note. Thank you so much for being here. I saw an op-ed piece on foxnews.com the other day, and it said...
That's where he spends his time.
Republicans... I was imbued by the Pope with a desire to know what the other folks were
That's
saying.
right, good.
Republicans, but this piece said Republicans need a speaker who can change the terms of the debate and impose discipline on party members. Oddly enough, former Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi is the prototype. This is on foxnews.com. And then in other news, hell has frozen over, actually. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, darling. Thank you, Madam President.